There it is.
Good evening, everybody.
All right.
Welcome to another episode of Forever West Old Time Radio Hour. How's it going, James?
Good, Doss. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Good, man. I got some sickness running around my house, but other than that, I'm hoping it doesn't hit me.
Good. Yeah, it's always like playing a game of cat and mouse with germs when you
absolutely. If there's any
stay away from me.
Yeah, if there's any teenagers involved that go to a public school, I'm like, it's your fault. I know it's your fault. You touch door handles, it's your fault.
Yeah. Well, this is episode 2 of our Croquet Photo series, which I think is probably going to be our concluding episode of this.
Absolutely.
Discussion.
Yeah, we're gonna finish it up today.
So, one thing I thought was cool on the tails of episode 1 was that it seemed to generate some discussion in the wider social media community. And I reached out to a few people who I knew who were more in favor or optimistic about the photo, because I do like to give voice to folks who are on the other side of the fence from what, we seem to be saying or documenting. And so I reached out to Susan Stevenson. Susan did a lot of work on this back when it was initially put out. I think it was even before the documentary aired. She did a lot of legwork and research on it, and she wrote back to me, and I'll just read you what she said. She said she talks about the documentary New Evidence, and she said a lot of the claims made in the documentary have proven to be unfounded, which we would agree with, which takes away from the actual photo. The date that was given has been debunked by many historians, as well as my father, Gary Jones. Gary was a nice guy. He recently,
he was.
He recently passed away, past year or so, and he was a nice dude. There's no evidence that it was taken at any wedding. That was an assumption on the part of the producers. Research of Sally Chisholm's journal prior to the filming of New Evidence. She goes on to say, Jeff Aiello said the foundation of the structure was identical to that of the one in the photo. After the documentary was filmed, Jim Williams had located another possible location for the hills in the background. Jeff stated they may have gotten the location wrong. She said, with all this being said, I still believe it could be Billy the Kid and some of his buddies. She talked a little bit about Kent Gibson, saying how it wasn't 100% match, things like that. I never believed that Paulita Maxwell was in the photo to start with. And let's see, the gentleman that owned the photos in the storage unit was traceable back to the Beaudry family. She didn't have the paperwork handy when we were talking on Messenger, but she did the research on that, and I'm sure we could track that down. But it's just late in the game at this time. The chain of custody she said the chain of custody could never be proven, so therefore it can never be authenticated in the way it would need to be for any historian.
True.
And she talks about the Beaudry and the Manuela Herrera theory, and she acknowledges, Eddie Lanham and other folks who've come to the conclusion that may not be the correct family.
We're going to get to that.
She says, in her opinion, that's another argument that has not been proven. For all of this, the history probably will never surface. But she said, I do still like the photo. And so that's from her. She seems to focus on the connection to the Beaudry family that the photo has, and the fact that, a lot of the material presented in the documentary was kind of like a false start for any argument.
Right.
Then I will say this, Steve Cedarwall posted in the Cold West group and I know I'm not sure how many people know that I'm at least on speaking terms again with Steve. So a lot
Yeah.
of the old feuds have been pushed aside, and I was able to talk to him on the phone about this a little bit, and I'll read from his post. He says he became aware of the photo when Jeff Aiello called him and began telling me about the picture. Uh, he said he acknowledged Susan Stevenson in his post, whose message I just read. He
Mhm.
said Susan Stevenson worked behind the scenes on the program. She and David Turk gave me some information after the show was in the can and Nat Geo had it. They had the ex wife's phone number for the man who owned the photo before Randy bought it from the boys. Being curious, I called the lady. This is Steve Cedarwall's account. She was
Right.
very pleasant and forthcoming. She said that Beaudry, who was sitting on the horse to the right, so apparently, according to Steve, the ex-wife of the guy who owned the shed identified Beaudry on the horse to the right, sent the picture to one of his brothers. The brother passed it on to his daughter, and she
Mhm.
handed it down to her son, the man who owned the storage locker, who died and stopped paying on the locker, causing the owner to sell the contents. During our conversation, she said she had seen the photograph many times and had also seen, quote, the other stuff, unquote. That put me into a four-wheel lock skid. What other stuff? She remembered other pictures and paperwork. I wasn't working on the provenance or chain of custody. I was just curious and wanted to know more about the picture. This woman had no reason to lie. There was nothing in it
Mm.
for her or me for that matter. Uh, and then anyway, that's his conclusion, that he talked to this lady and she
Yeah.
apparently corroborated with him that it was a Beaudry hand down thing in the family, and she remembered other stuff. Now, also he mentioned David Turk, who also did some research on it. So I emailed David,
Mhm.
and David Turk's a nice guy. He was generous enough to get back to me, and he said, James, I'm just going over my email and saw this. This is an email from him on July 13th. He said, I keep seeing the debate on the croquet image come up. But of all the other images out there, it's the only one I have some confidence in. I'm not one for endorsing images that is not my area of expertise. It's been a while, but generally the account is below. He says, back when I was working on my second Billy the Kid book, Here Lies Billy the Kid, I did a lot of background work on the Beaudry family. I got to know members of the family who lived in Arkansas, the descendants of Charlie Beaudry's brother. The member I worked with, an elderly woman who is deceased, acknowledged the image, which had something to do with Charlie's marriage or another important family event. It was sent to her grandfather, who was Beaudry's brother. Apparently, Charlie was close to this younger brother and warned him not to come to New Mexico territory because of the troubles. Subsequently, her aunt inherited this and other family images. She and her husband had adopted children. One of the sons who procured the image took it to California, where he worked on the railroad. He married, got divorced, and was about to marry again when he died in his 50s in the appropriate area. He goes on to say, my work was on the genealogical and historical links tracing the image from Arkansas and then to California. It's not actually provenance, but a roadmap that could lead there. Others took up the cause after my initial research, and they found out a storage locker had indeed been purchased. I get why people are skeptical, he says, but every stop seems to check. What people
Mm.
need to realize is that there was always a possibility that more than one verified image exists. And those other claimants, this one, and of those other claimants, this one has some credibility. If this didn't check out to my satisfaction, I would not have believed in it. But the roadmap holds, and I still believe that today. Best, Dave. So, and he did give me permission to share that email, which I thank him and Steve and Susan all for. But um,
Sure.
so I do like how David separates provenance from roadmap to provenance,
Right.
and
Like possibility that I could get somewhere if I just keep pushing.
Right. Yeah. And I
kind of
think
thing.
that's
Yeah.
important. Like this Beaudry connection is very fascinating. And that is indeed a fantastic roadmap that I don't think I'll ever commit to researching it, but it would be dang cool if somebody did, and whether they could rule that out or establish further connections. Like David said, this is a roadmap that could lead there. But it's cool. I thought I would just share the three perspectives from folks who really did a lot of work when this thing first came out, and are really shared a lot of intimate knowledge with the folks who were like Randy, who owns the photo and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it was cool that they all reached out, and I was able to discuss that with them. So yeah, there's three dissenting voices, give their views for it.
Yeah. No, that was important. And last week we ended on a couple of quotes from historians on the side of this. This is, not the kid. We heard from Mark Lee Gardner. We heard from Frederick Nolan. But I do have a couple other ones as well that would show some support towards this being authentic. This one is interesting to me, and I saved it so we can get it to this week. I just couldn't cover it last week. So this comes from a woman named Whitney Braun, PhD, Masters in Human Bioethics at Loma Linda University. Okay. And this can be found in Mark Boardman's article from 2015. Okay. To me, physical posturing and positioning is almost as unique to an individual as their facial features. Charlie Beaudry has the same head tilt and posture in both his cabinet card with Manuela and Randy's image. Billy has the same stance in the iconic image as in Randy's. Paulita Maxwell and Sally Chisholm have postures that match their postures in their other known photographs. Paulita Maxwell's shoulders come forward slightly, and Sally Chisholm has almost perfect spinal and shoulder alignment. Okay? So that's something, somebody else that also sees it, from that way. Another important quote that I had, here ready to go, and then we'll kind of get on to the second part here, because I thought it was important. Last week we talked about how, Randy purchased the photo in 2010, and starts showing it around, to the Old West Field, and it sees a lot of eyes see that photo, right? And he doesn't get a lot of support, and he just keeps pushing on. And he came in contact with a lot of people, and one of those people was Brian LaBelle. Okay, he's the auctioneer who runs the Old West Events auction house that sold Billy's tintype for $2.3 million. Okay. Brian's been around for a while. He's seen a lot of artifacts. And I mentioned this last week of how the documentary is edited and how it's made to show you how they want you to think things are happening. But I wanted to run this over real quick because Brian makes a good point of just about how things are filmed. It's not necessarily about the photo in general, but it's just about how the documentary decided to portray it. And I think that's very important when we deal, even 10 years ago, 11 years ago in 2015, it's important to acknowledge what we know and how the media wants us to see it, right? How they want us to view it. So this comes from Brian LaBelle. I wish Randy and Linda only the best and am pleased with the exposure our event in Fort Worth, Texas received in the film. However, I do not believe that the program should be called a documentary. It is masterfully edited reality television, produced to entertain you, not inform. For example, the film is edited to give you the impression that the first time I saw Randy's photo was in Fort Worth in June of 2015, when he had actually shown it to me several years prior at a show in California. That the Croquet Kid photo had been known to many of us in the industry for a number of years is never mentioned in the documentary, but rather creative editing gives the viewer the impression that Randy's quest happens over a whirlwind 4-month period. This is simply not true.
Yeah, it's just good television.
Right, right. I thought that was it was a good one because he's not saying too much about the photo. He's just talking about, um, yeah, I
Man,
thought that was a good one. It
yeah,
just kind of points out like, well, look, this is edited to make you think that way, and it seems more plausible that way, right? Like, this is crazy. Look at the story. Look at this guy's his look what I've discovered, and now I'm going around to the world and whatnot. And yeah, and Brian just wanted to point out that that's not the way it was. And like we had mentioned, that the documentary doesn't really start to get into work until 2014, so 4 years after he bought the photo.
yeah, I think that's a big lesson for everybody to learn about documentaries is that anything you see on History Channel or even PBS or anything like that,
Yeah,
it's made first and foremost to be a television product, to entertain, to keep people engaged, and after that, yeah, there's a motivation to tell the truth, but when producers get their hands on it, their focus is how do we make money with this thing? How do
yeah,
we get the money that we've invested back? And part of that is entertainment. And
sure.
yeah, that's just something good that everybody should learn about documentaries on TV.
Exactly. Okay. All right. So let's get into the last part of this. We only were unable to cover one claim last week because, of course, we have those side paths that we have to travel down. We have to experience them, and we have to, look at everything. So last week we covered when Randy bought the photo, when the documentary kind of came to fruition, who was involved. Don Kagan, who was the coin collector and appraiser, right? Who was brought in to help authenticate the photo. We discussed the claims that they made in the documentary. And as Susan Stephen pointed out, that some of those things were just pure assumption, which is unfortunate. But, you did say it in a documentary that reached millions and millions of people.
Yeah.
And some of those people, a very small percentage, mind you, but some of those people just kind of knew what they were listening to, and they knew that it wasn't right. you know so there's just one of those things. So we covered the claims that they made, and then we broke those down, right? So we broke down the fact that Sally Chisholm, who is also one of the people that Ken Gibson said he positively identified, right? Well,
Yeah.
Sally Chisholm's own diary entries would give us a completely different impression that her, including the regulators, the ones named in that photo, are actually with her and her uncles, or her dad and her uncle. So Jim and Pitzer Chisholm, right? The regulators were being hunted by that troop detachment sent by Colonel Dudley, led by Millard F. Goodwin. And that was all because of the killing of Indian agent Morris Bernstein. Okay. So we've got Sally Chisholm, who's apparently been identified in the photo. She places herself over 200 miles away in Fort Sumner this entire week that this photo could have possibly been taken. Okay. So we covered also the fact that they said it was taken on the grounds of Tunstall's ranch on the Felice, and that there was a schoolhouse with very legit documentation. We were able to prove and show that the building that they stood in front of and had their photo taken saying, hey, we found it. This is the schoolhouse that's in the Croquet photo. We were able to prove that the one that they believe is in their tintype wasn't built until 1935, right?
Mm-hmm.
We covered all of the Flying H Ranch stuff, right? Because Dolan ends up owning that property, that whole property after Tunstall's death. And over the next, 10, 11 years, he's going to build a lot of buildings, including a new home. The entire Flying H Ranch still exists and became part of the New Mexico National Historic Registry in 1988. And they provided so much information within that registry form. And so we showed all those things. We talked about the claims, And we broke them all down. And, if everyone remembers, we don't have time to go through all of it, but we do have one claim left. So I just kind of wanted to get everybody up to date and kind of what's, where we're at, so we can kind of get right back on track. And we're going to cover this claim, and then we'll go over and talk about some other things that don't necessarily establish provenance, but they're important to discuss. And we've seen these discussions, and I think it's important that we get, everybody else's take on it. People throw up questions, throw up opinions, whatever you would like. Okay. One of the last claims made is that this was the wedding celebration for Charlie Beaudry and his new wife, Manuela Herrera. Now, for many years, right, anyone who reads kid history and is really up to par on kid history, they're going to know about this. And if you don't, then you're going to find out some history that many believe for years and how it was debunked just a few years ago. Okay.
Decades, really, man.
Yeah, decades. So long. And we've got all that information. For many years, it was believed that Charlie married Manuela Herrera, who was the half-sister of Doc Scurlock's wife, Antonia Herrera. In Garrett's book, published in 1882, Garrett only referred to her as Beaudry's wife. However, in the year 2000, an annotated edition of Garrett's book was released with notes and commentary by the late, great Frederick Nolan. On page 94, note 5 of that edition, Nolan stated that Beaudry and Scurlock's wives were half-sisters. Their father, Fernando Herrera, was a Basque farmer whose first wife died shortly after the birth of a daughter, Antonia, in 1860. Beaudry's wife, Manuela, was one of the daughters of Herrera's second wife. This is one of the very first references to Manuela Herrera being Beaudry's wife. Nolan's source for this was unpublished genealogical research by Dwayne Hale out of Roswell, New Mexico, and Michael Stewart out of Midland, Texas. Okay? So there we have that. Unpublished research. Okay? But again, this is in lots of books. Lots of books. For many years, all of us like, man, this story, right? Doc and Charlie, not only were they friends and regulators together, they were half brothers, right? They're in-laws.
Yeah, and I don't know how it became such a cemented fact of Billy lore, but it did. It really permeated the whole mythos, and that was fact.
Right. And so when you maybe see other YouTube videos, presentations on this subject, or Facebook groups that, that do this kind of history, anytime there's anything about Charlie, even after the research that I'm about to share, it still says that he's married to Manuela Herrera. But what if we told you that is absolutely 100% incorrect? And this is a claim made by them, which, not really a claim. They just went with what history books had already told them, right? But in December of 2023, historians Ralph Kennedy, Eddie Lanham, and my pal Robert Buckley uncovered the truth about the woman standing next to Charlie in the infamous blood-stained photograph. The following is a summary of their research. So everyone, please hear that. Not my research, not James's research. It is a summary of their research. Okay? So December of 2023 is when this first hit everyone. Okay. Manuela de Herrera was age 5 in the 1870 census as a daughter of Fernando de Herrera and Juliana de Herrera. This would have made her around 12 or 13 years old if she had married Charlie in either 1878 or 1879. But that woman in the photo with Charlie clearly isn't 12 or 13 years old.
Charlie's going to walk into Fernando's house, and Chris Hansen's going to be there waiting on him.
Right. Oh, Chris Hansen. All right. The 1885 territorial census listed Manuela being married to a man named Maximino Corona.
Okay.
They were married February 25th, 1884. They also had a newborn son named Manuel. Some more substantial evidence solidifying Manuela's age is her death certificate in 1939 under the last name Salisbury. At her death, she was married to Jimmy Salisbury, and her birth date was listed as 1866. So, who was Manuela Beaudry? In 1926, Paulita Maxwell Jaramillo told Walter Noble Burns that Manuela Beaudry, Charlie Beaudry's wife, was a dark, glowing, slender little creature of high spirits. Poor girl. It broke her heart when Charlie was killed by Pat Garrett and his manhunters. But time mends broken hearts. And Manuela married Leif Holcomb, a cowpuncher, and was living in the Capitans the last I heard of her.
Wow.
Paulita's statement to Burns was supported by the 1885 New Mexico Census, Fort Sumner, San Miguel County, where Lafayette Holcomb was listed as boarder in the home of Manuela Gonzalez, age 33, with her 2-year-old daughter, Zenaida. Manuela's birthplace was listed as Old Mexico and marital status as divorced. Charlie had assets in both Mississippi and New Mexico. In 1889, a probate court in DeSoto County, Mississippi determined that an attorney named D.W. Dockery was appointed administrator of Beaudry's Mississippi assets. There was no mention of a surviving spouse. So, if Manuela Gonzalez was Charlie's wife, it's interesting her name wasn't documented. In March of 1881, the probate records of San Miguel County stated that Peter Maxwell was principal and guarantor of Beaudry's New Mexico estate. It was signed Pedro Peter Maxwell, Felipe Baca, Lorenzo Lopez, and Manuela Gonzalez. Whether or not Charlie was even married to Manuela Gonzalez has yet to be determined.
Yeah.
But he definitely was not married to Manuela Herrera, and he sure as hell didn't have a wedding celebration with her. And there you have it. So this week's shout out, it's got,
Go ahead, do your shout out.
I was going to say, shout out this week definitely is going to go out to Eddie Lanham, Ralph Kennedy, and Robert Buckley, because that is fantastic research. They have all the documentation to support it. Their work was, I believe, featured in a couple of journals and some articles. They did posts on it. But as you and I were talking before we went live, that I really was impressed by this and thought that this would go a little bit further with people. It kind of seemed to die down pretty quickly, almost like, well, I'm not hearing the kid's name, so maybe it's not that important. Maybe I think that sometimes, you know what I mean? Like maybe people, well, okay, where's Billy? Where's Billy? Where's the kid?
Right.
He's the legend. He's what we want to know about.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It just seemed to die down a lot faster than I wished it would have. I wish that would have reached a lot more people so we can solidify that, so there would stop being posts about, oh, he was married to a 12-year-old girl.
Right. Yeah. Very big piece of the puzzle.
Huge.
I kind of suspect that they weren't legally married.
Right. Yeah.
But I do. When was that record? What was the year again for that record with Zenaida on there?
Okay. So Paulita's statement, Paulita's statement to Burns was supported by the 1885 New Mexico Census, Fort Sumner, San Miguel County, where a Lafayette Holcomb was listed as boarder in the home of Manuela Gonzalez, age 33, with her 2-year-old daughter, Zenaida.
Well, she would have been born in 1883 then.
Yeah.
So
that means that whoever that woman is, she wasn't pregnant in the photo.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that means whoever that woman is, she was not pregnant.
At least not with Zenaida, but
right.
Well, I don't think she was pregnant anyway. Yeah, I don't think that was. You know, that's just
Yeah,
how
no, I hear you.
women's, I think, my opinion is that's just the fashion of the dress, and she's got her hand there just in that photo, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. James, I'm going to need to mute my mic for a minute. Can you talk?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Doss has to disappear. Um, Better make sure you're muted before you gotta do what you gotta do, man. Um, yeah, but I do think that it's good to give the dissenting voices, or the not dissenting or opposing, but the alternative voices, an equal footing here, because, I'm inclined to not think this is an authentic photo of Billy, or at least I don't see why we should be enthusiastic about believing it at this point. But I do find the possible link to Beaudry ancestors to be kind of appealing and at least worth researching. If there can be a definitive link established to the Beaudry family, going down to where the eventual descendant rents a storage facility, and especially if we can get whether that ex-wife or a surviving family member, if she's passed on, who know, like, independently of Randy finding the photo, independently of anybody feeding the information to her, says independently on her own, this I knew this through family lore to be Billy or to be Charlie. That'd be
Right.
a big
Yeah.
deal. So, I mean, yeah, very important stuff.
Yeah. And I agree where it's like,
Colin said,
Randy's.
"We still hear you, Doss." He was just joking, though.
Yeah, I made sure it was muted. The red light was on. I do agree somewhat. I'm a stickler for the documentation.
That's
And
right, yeah.
while the Benjamin Beaudry thing is very interesting, but it does need to point out that that information was not featured in the documentary. They
Right.
apparently came across this a little bit later. I wondered if that was due to the heavy criticism that the documentary took. But either way, this whole Benjamin Boundary storage thing, I don't know about you, but I have yet to see anything documentation
Well,
wise that
yeah, it's
supports
one of
it.
those things that I'm like, "Yeah, this needs research," but it's also one of those things that's like, "Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna research it." It's just not something that I
Yeah.
want to throw my time into, but, it would be cool if someone did, and we could see some results of that, but it
Yeah.
ain't me, babe, as Bob Dylan says.
Well, and it's tough because there's these things, and sometimes I don't know if I say this, if it's going too far, but just as the conspiracies that surround the kid's death, right? And how they're still going strong, if not stronger than ever, right? On the heels of a possible Young Guns 3 film, right?
Right.
So now all this stuff is just coming, it's always been there. Sometimes it dies down for a little bit and then it kicks back up again. We just experienced another passing of Billy's death, and I don't know how many new, mind you, asinine theories that I read on Facebook over the last few days, but some of them were very hilarious. And I'm like, someone should just write a book about this, a fictional book, because this is a great story. But I hear new things, and we talked about that goalpost, right? It's always getting moved.
Always
Well,
moving.
this, if you think about it, out of all of the kid photos, supposed kid photos, this one is really, really running a long-term race,
Mhm.
or a long-term con, however you would like to put it. But again, this just keeps, you know what I mean? To me, it's on the same level as the conspiracies that killed him. You've got so many people out there that will take all the information that they see, that they read, and they're just like, well, this is what I believe. Great. Nobody has ever said you don't have the right to believe what you believe in. But when we're in this industry, because it is an industry and we're in it, there is a method. It isn't about, well, No, I did it right and you did it wrong. It's about establishing legit evidence with legit links that can be traced, supported, documented, right?
Mm-hmm.
And literally everything about this croquet tintype is nothing but hearsay, because we can destroy every historic claim that they made, right? I mean, because let's really narrow it down. I mean, so far we've got I'm just saying, we've got a building that didn't exist until 1935. We have outlaws that were not present at the time that the photo was supposedly being taken. We've got a wedding celebration as the excuse of the photo, whether assumption or not. You still said it. You still made that claim. So a wedding celebration of two people who were never married.
Yeah, never.
Never. So, right, I mean, never. But we do have other stuff, right? And I thought we could talk about that, even though if it's already been kind of just repeated so many times over and over, and even if everybody has read these ones, if not, there are other things that people have examined, right? Other than the kind of documentation that we are examining. And one thing that I think it gets brought up a lot, right? Let's talk about this, because this is in the documentary too, unfortunately. So if the tintype was taken in like a late July, early August, or hell, even as September, as the producers would eventually now claim, right? They would change it to September. I forgot to mention that. So they did change it after the documentary, which I think is a result of what they dealt with, like the consequences, the outcomes of it. They were just like, okay. So then it got changed to September. Okay. So one question that gets constantly asked by people that are just observing the photo as what it is, right? Why is the tree leafless and the ground bare of leaves? Why are the people wearing sweaters and overcoats when summer months in New Mexico offered the highest temperatures of the year? Right?
Yeah.
Now, Don Kagan, the auctioneer, the coin collector and appraiser, he offered an explanation for those leafless trees. Okay. He says that a major drought impacted the plants at the time the tintype was taken. Mm-hmm. However, history in New Mexico records a break in drought that year, and that the area got a higher than normal amount of precipitation. And in that Las Vegas Gazette advertisement, June 22nd, 1878, Frank Chapman's store, "We sell croquet mallets." Right beneath the same advertisement, it says, "The rainy season seems to have fairly set in."
Oh.
Okay. So Kagan, again, offers up something he knows nothing about. That's why I made the comment last time. Why is a coin appraiser appraising a turn of the century tintype? Why is he offering historical anecdotes about things he knows nothing about? To me, it's hard to get a late jump on this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, I'm just going to pick up Pat Garrett's book and I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to make another solution or, an equation as to, well, why are no trees? And those are good questions when you don't have anything else to go on until all this history started coming out and it got debunked very quickly, right? But until then, you're like, well, okay, these are all good points, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if anyone out there has looked at this photo and wanted to know, okay, well, why are the trees so threadbare and twisted? Why are they, dead, right? And I think that's just yet another detail that, again, you're stating something that can be quickly debunked by actual weather documentation in the territory at the time. Okay.
It looks like a cold day to me in that photo.
Does it? Well, and it could be because, is the photo actually taken July of 1878 or August 1878? We don't know that. No, it's what they claimed. And so far we've been able to eliminate all of those claims.
And did the Kagan guy, did the appraiser say that year was particularly hit by a severe drought?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
I mean,
it's in the documentary. That's what he says is the example for the reasoning why there are none, except, literally in June of 1878. It's literally talking about the rainy season, which in June, that's crazy, right? But, hey, it snowed in the Pacific Northwest in May last year. So, crazy stuff
sometimes it just
happens.
does crazy things. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And a couple other things. Let's go over these. How can the man pointing to the kid be identified as Tom Folliard when they're the same height? Another small detail that you have to just look at. But why would we bring this up? What does history record as Tom Folliard's nickname, James? What was his nickname?
Big Tom.
You don't remember. Bigfoot.
Bigfoot Tom.
Yep.
I did, but I was thinking Bigfoot Wallace. Am I?
Yeah, I know, right? Because it's the same. Okay. So we've seen this, right? Documented a few times. So descriptions.
Well, and I mean, we've seen that one picture that's supposed to be Tom, and to me, that.
But he's younger, right? He's younger. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, not at all.
Right. But I know what you mean. You look at that photo, the one known legit photo of Tom, and that is legit. It came from a relative. And you look at this one, right? And you were just zooming in on his face, the guy pointing, that's supposed to be Tom. I could see when you look at these photos, just instantly, you're like, boom, that's him. It looks so much like him. I get it. However, history is going to tell us something a little bit different, right? Tom, well, Young Guns 2 portray him as a squeaky, clean little 14, 15-year-old boy. Tom was actually more than 6 feet tall and weighed about 190 pounds. Okay. So in reality, Tom is probably a little over 3 inches taller than Billy and at least 50 pounds heavier.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say that gives another, kind of little chop off at the knees, depending on how you look at it, but it's another detail that we know historically that should be pointed out. Let's also talk about the fact that Kent Gibson, facial recognition expert, positively identifies not only the kid, Tom Folliard, Paulita Maxwell, Sally Chisholm, and Big Jim French. Mm-hmm. The others were not identified. We have a problem here too. Another problem, James, and that problem is 3 years ago, my pal James here, 100% unequivocally debunked the fact that if you search regulator Big Jim French on the internet, you will find a photo, one photo only, that shows Jim French. And for years, many people believed that is regulator Jim French. Well, as it turns out, as James proved 100%, and we have that article here with all that information. We might read some of it. We've got time. But James posted this in 2023, and without a doubt, proved that, yes, this man is a Jim French, but he's not our Jim French. He was Jim French from the Cook Gang, right? And there had been some questions over that of the years. Well, there was another James French that wrote with the Cook Gang, and you were able to solidify that with documentation, newspaper articles, and even I thought, which was very interesting, was the note. The note on his body. Yeah. So we got time. We definitely got time. And this piece is so good. I'm going to read some of the, some of these key points.
I will share real quick that Wikipedia still has the bogus photo on the Jim French page. He was key participant in the 1878 Lincoln County War, and there is the photo.
Right. So this is the man that they say that Ken Gibson positively identified by matching the man in the croquet tintype to this man right here with that crazy looking face. Okay. Here we go. This is important. I know this was 3 years ago when you did it, but man, like this is so relevant to what we're talking about because we're just going to put another nail in the coffin right here. Our man in Catoosa, Jim French, March 14th, 2023. Big Jim French, reportedly a half Cherokee drifter from Indian Territory, was a cowhand employed by John Chisholm, who joined the McSween-Tunstall faction at the outbreak of the Lincoln County War. He participated in the assassination of Sheriff William Brady and was wounded in the ensuing skirmish. He was with his companions when they were pursued and fired upon by Sheriff Long's party outside of San Patricio. He was in McSween's home, along with William H. Bonney and others, during the 5 days battle in the town of Lincoln. But shortly after the winding down of the Lincoln County War, Jim French disappears from history. There are many theories and ideas about where Jim went. There was a letter from Jim French to Sam Corbett, reminiscing about standing guard duty for the Susan McSween and remarking that she still owes French money. But it's authenticity. Say it, James.
Authenticity
God, is disputed. Well, you have all your numbered notes.
Yeah.
It's like 1, 2, 3. All right. James Kell French, born 1872, and was no way connected to Billy the Kid or the Lincoln County War. Many people claim that after leaving New Mexico, Jim French joined the Cook gang led by outlaw Bill Cook and was killed along with the Slaughter Kid in February of 1895. It's very likely that the image which finds
Kid who possibly was the one that shot William H. Carr.
That's right. That's right. And William H. Carr in return shot back at him, and he did hit him but didn't kill him.
That's right.
Yeah. Another kind of crossover to one of our other episodes.
Yeah.
Okay. Many people claim that after leaving New Mexico, Jim French joined the Cook gang led by Bill Cook and was killed along with the Slaughter Kid in February of 1895. It's very likely that the image, which finds wide circulation in historical circles claiming to be regulator Jim French, finds its sources in newspaper articles about the death of this Cook gang member. Was former regulator Jim French a member of the Cook gang in Oklahoma in the 1890s? No. Bill Cook, along with brother Jim, took to outlawry sometime around 1893 or 1894. They were connected to train holdups all over Indian Territory, along with mail holdups, horse theft, and petty robberies. Other members of this gang included Crawford Goldsby, alias Cherokee Bill, Bill Doolin, Jim Turner, Skeeter Sequoia Houston, and Buzz Lucky. Okay. James Kell French would join the gang around 1894. He was the son of Thomas French. He went to the seminary at Tahlequah and graduated with high honors, going into saddle making after graduation. He married a woman named Nanny Ryder in 1893. French was described as having loftier instincts than Bill Cook, and was never a rowdy whiskey drinker or common thief like Cook. Although leading an upright life and good standing in his local community up to this point, sometime after 1893, French got into trouble at Fort Gibson. He was arrested at Fort Smith for carrying a pistol and placed in jail, from which he escaped by cutting his way out. From there, he would join up with the Cook gang. November 1894, Fort Smith newspapers report that Jim French and other members of the Cook gang assaulted 3 young women in Oologah, 10 miles north of Claremore. The men approached on horseback, dismounted with their revolvers, held on the women, and forced the women off the road into the bushes. Jim French was reportedly recognized by one of the victims, and the newspaper reports claimed he is one of the handsomest and best educated young men in the nation. He is 22 years old. At the end of November, French was tracked down by a posse, but escaped capture after a quick gunfight. Things heated up for French by the end of 1894. By November, he was already known as Bill Cook's second lieutenant. He had jumped bond at Fort Smith, and a $200 reward was put up by French's uncle. Things were heating up by French. By the end of 1994, it was reported that he and Bill Cook had parted ways. After being spotted in Uofala on December 3rd, he and all these Indian Territory names, December 3rd, he and other members of the gang attempted to rob the store of J.R. Pierce and Texana. The men got away with about $20 worth of merchandise before they were fired upon and chased out of town by 2 store managers. December 11th, the gang robbed a country store in Golconda, taking about $100 worth of money and merchandise. A likeness of James Kell French taken from the photograph, published by many contemporary newspapers, including the Nemaha County Herald on September 20th, 1895. In January of 1895, in Brooklyn, he shot a man named Scott Fisher. Then, after subduing his victim, shot him again in the foot for quote-unquote fun. French had another man saddle Fisher's racehorse and rode away with it. Jim was riding with Sam McWilliams, alias Slaughter Kid, in early February 1895. On the 7th of that month, the 2 young men rode into Catoosa and dismounted in front of E.A. Patton's General Store. A store manager by the name of Irving was sitting inside with an unidentified Texas cowboy. When French and Slaughter Kid attempted to enter, the Texas cowboy opened fire with his revolver, killing the Slaughter Kid instantly and wounding French in the midsection and the throat. French fled to a nearby house. The house owner fled his home and reported to the other residents that French was bleeding out in his residence. He reported to the other residents that French was bleeding out in his residence. I can't stand that. Those 2 words, exactly the same, spelled different, and in the same sentence. Oh, that was nuts. So when a posse of townspeople approached, Jim French lifted his head to look out from where he was reclining below the window, and he instantly received a shotgun blast to the face.
Yep.
French's body was taken to the jail at Fort Smith and was identified by his own brother Tom as being the noted outlaw. Jim was shot in the face with a load of buckshot, entering under his left eye and blowing out the back of his head. As he fell, his feet landed in the fireplace of the home, and his right foot was burned off at the ankle. That's brutal. The body was shipped to Tahlequah to the French family home. Jim's brother Tom only regret that Jim didn't live long enough to kill Isaac Rogers and Tom Scales, which was the destination Jim was traveling as he passed through Catoosa. While we still don't know for certain the origins or fate of the regulator known as Big Jim French, we can, at the very least, rule out one more possibility, as well as put to the rest the circulation of a spurious photograph. James Kell French, bandit and one-time leader of the Cook Gang, was not the same Jim French that took part in the Lincoln County War.
Yeah, sometimes
there you have it.
Getting at the truth just is eliminating one theory at a time. That's
right.
Not true.
So and
Iowa Joe asked which one in the photo was supposed to be Jim French, and I don't know initially who that was.
Did you find it?
But I think I think I talked with Susan about this like years ago, and she always said that this figure right here that's usually identified as Tom could have been Jim. And she points out something I thought was interesting. She says he's not holding a mallet; he's holding a cane. There's a curved end here, and this is more of a cane, and that this is not the end of the mallet. It's some sort of. She talks about French being wounded in the thigh in the Brady shootout, and that he's actually this is a cane kind of thing. So, but still, big Jim French. He's hardly any bigger than Billy, so I don't know why they'd call him Big Jim. But
the point is that Ken Gibson positively identified the man in the croquet photo as Big Jim French based on that photo. Right? So
yeah. And
if anything, I hope someone takes away a new opinion on facial recognition, because it just doesn't work that way. It just doesn't.
Maybe he thought one of these guys over here was Jim. too.
Yeah, but either way, they said they positively identified it. They also positively identified the woman standing there as Sally, right?
Right.
When she'll tell you herself, yeah, that wasn't me, because I was in Fort Sumner with the kid, with Tom, with Chevette, like all of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another thing, it's a big wedding celebration. This is way too close to the end of the Lincoln County War. Where have all the rest of the regulators who hadn't split off yet, right? You know what their answer was? If this question, it was brought up in the documentary, it was like, well, it's possible they weren't invited to the wedding. That's the answer. So, also, I want to point out that James's article is laced perfectly with all of his sources, and I mean, it is 100% legitimate. So, when again we're dealing with, I positively identified people who, you don't have a legit photo of to match with, so that's eliminated. You've got Sally Chisholm, who you're saying, the proponents of this, that was positively identified by Ken Gibson, except she's in Fort Sumner by her own diary that has existed for years and years. You can buy, like you said last week, it is possible to buy a copy of the diary. It is possible. So we have so many things. We have the schoolhouse, right? Not built till October 1st, 1935. But in the documentary, they're very sure that that's the building that croquet photo was taken in front of.
Right.
Okay. So we've got the James French thing. We've got the Sally, who is positively identified not being in the photo at all because she's in Fort Sumner. You have Paulita Maxwell, who at the time that photo would have been taken would be just on the cusp of 14 years old. And I do want to point out here that I always, out of all their things that go hand in hand with Billy history, is that while we are able to prove through quite a few sources that definitely, right, that Paulita is his girl, or at least he wants her to be, right? They've got this thing for each other, okay? Over the years, I have constantly seen this as a way to place Paulita in certain regulator events, which I find to be, I'm sorry, it's just ignorance at the highest level.
Right.
It's right. Well, it's Billy's girlfriend, so of course she's with the regulators. Right. Right. I got you. Right. So again,
yeah. So we, I think you've done a good job of addressing the goalposts of this photo as the documentary presented it. So the only thing for folks who feel like it's legitimate to do now is to set up some new goalposts. And I think that's, and I'm not saying that disparagingly.
No, yeah, I got you.
I think, if people still believe that this photo has merit, we're going to have to identify, hey, maybe you're looking at the wrong timeline. Maybe you're looking at the wrong people in the photo, the wrong occasion. Like completely start 100% at the beginning again, and in a positive like this time, but set up some new goalposts, because I think everybody, no matter what side of the fence they're on, agrees that the documentary is pretty much debunked at this point.
Yeah. I think it would have done them better and Randy better if the documentary was not made.
Yeah.
If it was just about his passion and his thrive and, what was making him push, like, I just believe it. Like, even if he told you, I couldn't tell you. I see this photo and I see the kid tintype, the authenticated one, and I'm like, there's something here. That, to me, I'm willing more to accept that than what they did with the documentary, right? Because then you were crossing over a line into a world of people who know a lot more than you do.
Well, and to an extent, it becomes offensive when people like Gibson say, yeah, that's certified like Jim French. And it's like, what? There's no picture of Jim French. So how can you say that's you're identifying that as Jim French. That's just
right.
It gets to be a little offensive and hard to, stay
Yeah.
objective and
Yeah. And, at first I hadn't even realized it back, 3 years ago when you originally posted that. And then I think it probably hit me about a week later. I'm like, oh shit, that's not Jim French in that photo. So how did they positively identify Jim French in the croquet tintype?
right.
It's not even him. So again, those things. And you know what? That's what sucks about these frontier photos, right? These Old West photos that people find, or the ones that float the internet. It's really tough, is because it seems like it's constant. It just never ends, right? It's not just
Right.
about the kid, right? There's lots of photos out there that people on the internet, well, that's Sally Chisholm. And I'm like, yeah, except there are photos of Sally Chisholm. So why would you look at this photo of Sally Chisholm and think that that's Sally Chisholm? Well, because the internet says so if you search her name and that's the photo that comes up. But I also
Right.
don't think that many people go far enough, right? You can Google something, a long, term with a couple of different details to it, and get everything that you want in that one search. And these photos come up. You need to click on them sometimes. Sometimes it helps. Sometimes you see photos used as the thumbnail for the article, and it's about the kid. One time, last week I came across an article, I don't know, a few years back, and it wasn't a real article. It wasn't even a real source. It was like somebody's personal blog, and it was about how supposedly the kid is one of the two boys standing behind Sally Chisholm in that photo, when it's her actual two brothers. But it wouldn't be the first time I have someone brought up that photo as this. I've heard this is Billy the Kid, and circle, one of the brothers with the editing pen. And I'm like, I don't, okay, where'd you hear that? Oh, it's in this piece. And, and it's like, oh, this is somebody's personal writing blog. This is not a source. Right. It's not a source.
Well, with that in mind, Dawson, I don't want you to answer because you know the provenance on this, but I want to know if any of our viewers have seen this photo of Pat Garrett. And if you've seen it, let me know. It's not a well-known photo of Pat. It's not widely circulated. It belongs to a private collection. And let me see here. Somebody's asking. Colin, have you seen this photo of Pat, or anybody you've seen it, right, Doss, this photo?
This one in particular, I actually have not seen it, but I wouldn't believe at all that it's Pat.
You would not believe it's Pat?
I don't believe it's Pat at all.
That's because it's my great-grandpa. But but this is what happens. People
Oh, you slick Rick. That was great.
This is what happens. People throw stuff up, and after about 10 retellings of this, all of a sudden my great-grandfather
is Pat
becomes Pat Garrett, and
man, that was such a clever little, like, hey, look what happens when people do crap like this. Yeah, dude, that went right over my head. No, that's great. That's great.
This is Thomas Jefferson Townsend. He was born in 1852, around Billy the Kid's time, in Indiana, and he was in Indiana about the time the kid supposedly was in Indiana. So I like to think that maybe they crossed paths somewhere.
But Willie, what is it that comes down to, other than the facial features? I get it.
Big mustache.
Right, but it's the mustache, right? That's what so many of these Old West photos. Yeah, the mustache. Everyone who's got a mustache and has that face, it's got to be Pat Garrett. I've seen so many photos like that. But no, that is very clever.
We've got a kid with a cardigan and a little top hat looking thing, and that's where it starts. That's where it begins,
Yeah, man, it's clever. For the most part, I think for episode 2, that's what I've got. I mean, we've covered the claims. We've talked about all the other little side things that could be brought up that may not establish true provenance, but they need to be discussed. But they definitely, without a doubt, eliminate the claims they made that establishes this photo as one William H. Bonney and his cohorts. So
Yeah.
I would say
Well,
to, I will never believe that it's that photo of them, and I don't believe it now, but I understand the passion. Out of all the photos, I would say this is the one that's probably going to keep people up at night for quite a long time.
yeah. And Susan, she says, I was on the fence about the photo, but Dawson James have put forward the most convincing evidence I've heard so far. Just want to reiterate that we're really standing on the research and work of other very capable folks like Corey Recco and all the folks, Susan Stevenson, even David Turk. These folks have looked into it and have done the legwork, and hopefully either way they'll continue to deliver more information on it, or somebody new will come along and do it. Colin has in the comments given us some very interesting perspectives on this. So yes, Susan, I appreciate you watching and listening on all of you. And but just want to reiterate, we basically summed up the good work that other folks have done on this and reframed it. But
yeah, and I want to say that I absolutely appreciate all the info from Susan, from what David Turk sent you. I appreciate that they're, 11 years later, they still got their passion and their heart about this photo. And here's what maybe I believed 10 years ago, and maybe here's where I'm going now. You got Dave Turk. And we should mention that Dave Turk is the official historian for the United States Marshal Service.
Yes, I believe he's enjoying a probably much anticipated and welcome retirement.
I would imagine so. He's been doing it for quite a long time.
I think he retired,
did he?
But he was the official historian for the U.S. Marshal Service. Matt Kern says the best evidence that this is Billy is that no one else owned a sweater between 1870 and 1920. Matt's a hilarious dude.
That's hilarious. That is very funny. Matt is the
author. He's the author of Texas Jack, America's first,
I've heard of the book.
What is it? The subtitle, I might get wrong. America's First Cowboy Star or something like that. But Matt is a great writer and a great thinker and a great researcher and historian. And he's also president, I believe, or soon to be, or will be, or was, or something. But he's heavily involved with the Texas Jack Association and just very knowledgeable about everything. I want to have him on soon. His insight is not only good and unique, but completely hilarious. So
then we definitely need to have him on. I mean, there's no question about it. Well, we've got some other people we've discussed about getting on.
Yeah,
I think because the conversation started pretty early with him, and from what you told me, I think for the first guest, whenever that is, whether it's next week, the week before, obviously we need to be able to work it out with their schedules. I think we need to get Mr. Daniel Rodriguez in here.
Daniel
Ramirez. I'm sorry. You've been discussing. You've talked to him. I haven't actually talked to him, but
Alamo Tunneler.
Yes, and he still works there, right? He works there right now.
I think he just recently left for a new position, but we'll have to iron that out.
Okay, because I'm very interested in hearing from someone who worked there for a long time and is really, up to par on their history when it comes to the Alamo, because I'm a greenhorn when it comes to that kind of stuff, and I would be very, very interested.
I do know that I love the Billy Bob Thornton movie, and I know it doesn't get a lot of screen time. People don't talk about it a lot.
It should. I
love it.
I think it's really good. I agree. It's very good. A couple of things before we go, because that's pretty much what I've got. I'm not going to do what you think I'm going to do, but I would like to say that also that Billy the Kid's Historical Coalition is also going to be doing their own thing on the Croquet Tintype, and they will have Mr. Corey Recco on. And Corey is someone we have mentioned quite a few times. He has done fantastic work on many of these now debunked photos that claim that they are, famous historical figures, especially from, Wild West. And so Corey will be on there. So anybody is interested in listening to Corey really go deep in it like we have and hear his opinions. He's got a lot to offer, and Corey's a good guy. I like Corey. So anybody that is interested in hearing more, from another side of it, even though Corey does take the same path that we do as far as the photo is concerned, I just think he's very informative and he's a good guy, and I think it would be, interesting interview.
Yeah. Chris Farrell says to make the show 2 hours. Sometimes we do just by
sometimes we've gotten close. Yeah. But I thought would be perfect. One of the last things that we could discuss about this. Okay. I'm going to leave you guys with a little quote. And it's literally one sentence, but to me, it's just another nail in the coffin for this unfortunate photo that I wish was legit. Okay. This entire time, episode 1, episode 2, we have discussed a man named Kent Gibson, right? The facial recognition expert. What does Kent Gibson actually say about these identifications that he's made? Kent Gibson stated, in a court of law, I would have to deny it. It's not detailed enough to make a really valid image. In a court of law, I would have to deny it. It's not detailed enough to make a really valid image.
Yeah.
I think that's just about as much as we could possibly state on this photo.
Yeah, it is. I do have one more thing I want to mention.
Yeah.
When I brought up Steve Cedarwall, I noticed, I think it was Susan who said, wow, you guys are talking again. and someone, either her or someone else, said it's just great to see all these folks talking again. And that's the thing, in the past there have been a lot of just feuds and back and forth and these like turf wars almost in history, and it got to a point for me like I don't want to do that anymore. And part of that has been, and part of that for me has just been not excusing any behavior, or not, everybody says and does stuff that maybe they shouldn't have, but for me, for my part, has been reaching out to folks and being like, look, aside from who did what, who said what happened first, who slung this, aside from all that, I need to make amends and apologize for some of my words and actions and how I behaved in certain instances. That being said, I did also reach out to Michael Giudicissi and reestablish contact. And I would like to report that July 20th, I will be rejoining MAG for a discussion of history and Billy talk. And once again, MAG's podcast, Back to Billy, but years ago was where that was my first debut in the podcast world. That was my first appearance on a podcast, and that was where I earned the name Cardigan Kid.
That's right.
So aside from the beefs that have separated many of us for years, and this and that I have done my part to contribute to, we will be coming back to audiences in the same virtual studio again, and revisiting. So I'm thrilled to share. That'll be on his channel, and I'm thrilled to share that that's going to happen, and we're going to have a delightful convo, and hope to see a lot of you all over there. But yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah, Joe. Joe says James has gone soft in his old age. Yeah, I've reached the point. I've reached the level of Luke Skywalker where I've retired to the island and just live in my little rock hut and just do my own thing. I'm officially. I've gone full Last Jedi. So
right, and then years later, someone shows up in a cowboy hat and raises their head out of the darkness, and James is like, "How'd you find me?
I don't do that no more." That's right. I ain't about that life no more.
Well, I would say that wraps up our Croquet Kid deep dive, and I will say that next week, if our because I think it's about time we do an interview. I think that would be great. And, you and I together, I think it'd be really great. And after Daniel, I know we've got a couple of people that we have discussed like this would be a great idea. But I will say that if we can't get it on the schedule for next week for an interview, I have something that we will be discussing if that interview, scheduling cannot work out. But I'm going to leave it a complete secret until we can get everything worked out. That way, there is no jump the gun at the beginning of the week in case we have to reschedule or whatever, because I don't want anybody to get too excited, because if the interview scheduling doesn't work, then I'm going to present something big next week, and it might even take 3 parts to get it all done.
Cool.
So, but that will only be if the interview situation doesn't work out, because I'm jonesing to hear these stories. Like, I've looked into a little bit, and I'm getting more and more interested, and I would love to hear it from someone who literally has walked around that place and been paid to walk around that place and learn all about it. Like, I'm excited for it. But either way, whenever we do a podcast again, and we're going to go back into a deep dive, it's going to be a big one. So whenever we get to that next, it'll be a big one.
Chris asked, do we know when Guns 3 is coming out? I don't, but I did. I got a message from Josh from Wild West Extravaganza the other night. And he said that there's some kind of the cast of Young Guns is like coming through Dallas, going to some Comic-Con right now. So I know they're not filming right now, whether they've already filmed or need to. They're doing this. And our other friend, Nicole Romero, I think she met Lou Diamond Phillips.
She did.
Yeah. So she went to, like, I guess they're making a tour right now of these Comic-Cons, and as a whole cast, of Young Guns. And so that's what they're doing right now. I don't know what the filming schedule is like for Guns 3, or whether it's in pre or post, but I don't think it's happening right now.
No. And, this is kind of like, the world of Billy and everything that surrounds it, whether it be film, books, articles. This is kind of like, this was our, daily life. Like, this was our intake for a lot of time. And you just get good at finding out information and knowing what's what. And when it comes to this, since it's just like, it's highly anticipated, right? It's been highly anticipated for years.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that I do know to this point that nothing has been filmed. Whether it will be or not is still a question, right? But we do know the plot. So if anyone is like, well, I've heard all kinds of things, it could be this, it could be that. Well, you need to still kind of think of the spectrum that Young Guns 2 left us in, right? If they did something that completely, even though a lot of stuff in Young Guns 2 and Young Guns is not historically accurate, especially 2, they get the deaths. They don't get it wrong. They did it that way on purpose, right? They kill off Charlie in Young Guns, and they killed Doc at Stinking Springs in Young Guns 2, when in reality, that's how Charlie was killed, and Doc didn't die at all. Right. And they do, and so when Charlie dies at Young Guns 1, well, then they've got to figure out the Stinking Springs incident. Someone's got to die there, right? So the point is if you know Young Guns 2 well, you have to acknowledge who they killed off in the film.
Dude,
these are all the same ones. Right.
I would bring them all back.
Right. That's what I'm saying. The cast is supposed to all come back, because either whether it be in dream sequence, right, flashback, or whatever. But we know that Lou Diamond Phillips has been a big proponent of this, right? He's gone on his own social media and talked about it, and in podcasts and interviews, whatever. Well, that they kill Chavez in part 2. So when you go, but that didn't historically happen. Yeah, no shit. But what I'm saying is the film makes you believe that, as far as, for years. Yeah. I mean, and you're a child, you're, 10, 11 years old when this film comes out, and you're just enthralled. And then you watch it 90, 100 times over the course of your life. And not till, the history really hits you, do you sit back and go, you know what? I just love this film for what it is. I don't love this film for his historical accuracy, because it's just yet another film down the path of kid films that have to rely on a misconception in order to make the film interesting.
Yeah.
And that misconception is that Billy and Pat were friends. Dude, right? Like deep friends.
Yeah, and at this point, with Young Guns 2, we left the sphere of historicity. So at this point, I would whenever you round up the regulators in Guns 3, I would have Emilio going up to the actor that played Charlie Beaudry in the first one. And old Charlie being like still alive and being like, "How did you find me?" And then he goes up to Chavez and Doc, and they all have like 13 bullet holes in them, but they've survived. And I would get every one of those guys back in. I would get little Tom Folliard, who took his medicine in Young Guns 2. I'd bring him back. I'd put them all in here like it's Expendables Part 12, you know?
You know what you just said when you just said that part, like take your medicine, son?
Yeah.
If another little historical anecdote, that reportedly was actually said, right? Or something along the lines of that from Barney Mason.
That was literally said, take your medicine. Yeah.
Take your medicine from Barney Mason. Yeah.
And Pat said that later on in life, when he had to own up to something, and he was like, yeah, well, I did it. I just had to take my medicine. They said that a lot back then.
Yeah.
Love those anecdotes. That and not much, Marianne. They always said not much. It kind of meant something like yeah, right. They said, and that I did a deep dive on that phrase once and went back to the Civil War, and it was considered crude soldier slang in the Civil War to say not much.
Do you, and now that we're just totally on this little detail right now, do you believe that Buckshot Roberts said that right before he opened fire at the Blazer Mill gunfight? Because I
don't know. I don't even know at this point if Frank Coe had a conversation with him.
Who knows?
I really feel like I love Alma Blazer's account of that whole thing, and the way that Alma Blazer tells it. He was probably 14 when it happened or something like that.
When the actual Blazer gunfight, he was about 12. And then so
the way he tells it is Roberts comes back, and those guys are in there eating, and Middleton or whoever shouts that he's out there, and they just come out and open, it just happens. And that seems to me to be more the case of how it would go down than some weird parley, and then you got Beaudry coming around the corner, and it just seems weird. But
it does.
I could be wrong.
Frank also, and also Frank also stated, which I've always liked Frank's reminiscences more than George's. But no, this is a good one, because I've always kind of wondered the same thing. Now, another detail too about stuff that Frank says that Robert says to him, right? Just come with us. We got a warrant. No one's going to hurt you. That Buckshot supposedly told Frank, no, the kid is with you and he'll kill me on sight. So referring to him in a way that would like be more of what his demeanor was a little bit later on. Like he's a nobody at this point. And there's no way that Buckshot's going to name him the kid out of that huge group of guys and go, this is the one I'm terrified of. Like, no, I just don't believe that at all. I just don't. That's one detail that to me that makes not a lot of sense. It's just one of those things like, well, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, what did Frank say? Frank said they talked for who knows how long before Charlie and everybody else apparently got irritated and, came out and So
I love that account. I remember when on Chasing Billy, we did a deep dive into that, and I went through Alma Blazer's account, and it was just the way it's very accurate, his layout of the place, the way he describes it, the sequence of events. It has the ring of truth to me, and that's my preferred method of visualizing it. And he doesn't have any parley happening with Frank Coe or anything. He's like, so what I like about it is because Roberts apparently played with the kids. Like he said they were building like a toy boat in the creek and stuff, and that Roberts helped them. And it was some kind of like a little wooden mill they were building, and Roberts would help them. And he came back to get the check or whatever, and he looked up and saw Middleton, and he turns to the kids, one of which is Alma Blazer, and says, "Get out of here." and like he knows it's going to happen, and man, and it just kicks off, and it's just I don't know why that doesn't sound like embellishment to me, and
Right.
it sounds realistic. And everybody, you know, I forget the other worker's name there, but there were people there who knew Roberts, and they all spoke super highly of him, like they really liked him. So the fact
Yeah.
that he demonstrates this concern for these kids, you know, to get out of the way, and he's just gonna, I mean, speaks highly of Roberts, and it's just a cool version, and it's what I like to imagine. It's
No, I hear you, and I know that account well. And what's also interesting, what you just said, is if anybody that knows that story well and is catching it. So Almer Blazer says that Roberts was already there, and then Middleton shows up. He sees him, get out of here, right? Except, what's the account that we've always known? The regulators were there, had their horses behind the high gate, right? So Roberts couldn't see their horses, and that they were eating in the Blazer home, right?
Yeah.
They were already there,
yes,
right? And then Middleton runs in. It was John Middleton. In the movie, in Young Guns, it was Dirty Steve, right? He
Yes.
comes in and
Yep.
says, "There's a mighty well-heeled man coming this way," which apparently is very close to what Middleton said. He said, "There's a well-armed man coming this way."
Food's
And
getting cold,
they were
Dick.
like, yeah. So, I mean, you have that whole bit. And so, yeah. So Almer Blazer stating, no, Roberts was already here with us. He didn't arrive after the regulators were there and then this started. He's stating that he was already there. So that's a big difference, right? However, I actually encountered this recently in a comment in another group, and someone had stated that Billy, without a doubt, killed Buckshot Roberts. And I asked why you had thought that and why that person had thought that. And that whole thing had come up about Almer Blazer and that whole bit, right? Well, so let's talk about that very quickly, and then I'm going to get out of here. So after Billy goes through trial, okay, in 1881, on his way, he's got John Kinney. Who else is in that wagon?
Ollinger,
Kinney,
is Ollinger with him?
Ollinger, Kinney,
Dave Woods,
a few other guys right there. Lockhart, yeah, they're all got Billy chained in the back of the wagon. They're taking him to Lincoln, right? Well, it's gonna be a couple days. They stop in Blazer's mill, get a bite to eat, water the horses, and while Billy still has his handcuffs on, right, he entertainingly reenacts the gunfight at Blazer's mill, which they had with Buckshot Roberts.
Yeah.
Almer Blazer is there on this day as well. He witnesses Billy doing the reenactment. Ollinger, Kinney, they're all like laughing, like they think he's hilarious. And then there was a couple, and one of them literally asked the question, "So you killed Roberts, right?" And Billy says something really like exciting, like, "Yeah, you know what I mean?" And Almer Blazer then, from that point forward into the 1920s and 1930s, is going to tell newspaper articles, interviewers, that Billy the Kid is the one who killed Buckshot Roberts.
And
well,
it's been a while since I read Almer's account, but I think he even says in that account that as Roberts was dying the next day, that he heard Roberts say that Billy's the one that got me.
Yeah, and my best guess is Roberts.
Yeah, he's very uncompromising on that take, but it's literally like the only source.
Yeah, he is the only source for it. But
yeah, and
in a article out of the Roswell, I think it was Roswell Daily Record, something like that, somebody sent to me a few years back. It's him discussing this, and he literally describes in detail when the kid is revisiting on their way back to Lincoln, and that's documented as well. And that's what I always took it, because he would have been 14 or 15 at the time when they come back through 3 years later. And that I literally always took it as he's a teenager, he's enthralled. He literally, because my problem with the Almer Blazer and Blazer's Mill is that you're trying to tell me that when this massive gunfight is going on, he is somehow in the perfect position to see literally everything. I don't buy it. Sorry.
It's so weird. There are things in his account that it's like, if it's true, it's so weird how gunfights were just normal at that time, because in the middle of all this, there's a time where he goes and eats lunch, and then he goes and sees the rest of it.
Yes, right. He treats it like he's watching it like it's a film, and he's eating, and this is entertaining, and I just don't buy that. I don't buy that at all, because if he's literally 11 or 12 years old when there's a massive gunfight, okay, his father was there, they had other Blazer children, right? You're trying to tell me that they were just like, that nobody was looking after to make sure the kids weren't safe when there's like multiple, gunshots being just rung off for like an hour straight? No. You're like, no, he was perfectly hidden in a spot in the corner over there in the post of the fence, and he saw everything. Because you got to remember, the Blazers Mill gunfight is, dude, do you know how many people gave testimonies about it? All the people are there. Literally nobody says anything else that Ulmer says.
Yeah.
When it comes to the kid shooting him, nobody says that. Nobody. Yeah. So,
man, I just go ahead.
I was going to say, and then Billy does the reenactment. Ulmer's also there. Now he's a few years older as a teenager. And I just think it was him taking Billy at his word. Like, no, I killed Roberts, I don't know. It is interesting, but then again, you have all the other testimonies, and again, we just got done talking about what Franco says. Okay, that's interesting. Is that true or not?
Colin, did you really get busted for trespass? Colin said he asked the coalition if I should talk to someone before going there, and they said no. I parked there and walked to the graves, and Joseph Blazer showed up and busted me for trespassing. Embarrassed. Well, at least that's a story you can carry with you, man.
That's funny. But yeah, just kind of one of those details that we got all carried away on. But yeah, like that's the thing. But I was gonna say, Franco, right? One of his interviews with Jay Evans Haley, when he's talking about the gunfight at Blazers Mill, we have that very intricate detail that he says about Billy. Remember, he says that Billy, one of the bullets just barely like grazed Billy's arm, and that Billy said it's too hot for him. He's got to get out of there, right? And he gets clear of the gunfire, and he hides, or not hides, but he takes cover, right?
That's right.
So one of those gunshots from Roberts gets close to hitting Billy, or does nick his arm. That's what Frank says.
Either that, I think there's another account where he's so close at that door frame that Roberts hits him in the gut with the stock of his rifle or something.
I think that came from Ulmer Blazer.
Oh, okay.
Because I've never, I know that one too. Again, I've never come across it again other than that one, and I think that's what he said. But I'm not sure if he's not the original source for the story of Billy running up to the outhouse where Buckshot was in, not the outhouse. I'm picturing the movie more, and I shouldn't do that because I'm trying to picture
the agency house.
Right, and then Billy runs up, and he got too close to the door, and Buckshot jammed the barrel into his stomach. Yeah, and I'm like, I've heard a few things, and then the kid shot at Roberts directly with his, put his revolver right to the wood, and then shot through it, right? And Ulmer Blazer would years later state, no, the gunshot from when Billy did that, it's still there, right? But again, it's all just verbal hearsay. It's not, nobody that can point out this out. Not even all the regulars who were there involved in the shooting. Nobody. They all say that Charlie shot in the beginning is the one that ended up taking Roberts' life.
Well, I got to head out and eat soon, but I will say that apparently the Vatican, there's that conspiracy theory that they have the chronovisor, which allows you to see into the past. I wish to God we had that and we could just see these events and know what really
chronovisor.
Happened. Yes. But that's my last word of wisdom to impart.
Perfect. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in yet again for another episode of Forever West Old Time Radio Hour. I am Das Boot, joined by always
James Townsend.
We will see you guys next week.
Take care. Thanks for listening.